We are now returning to open meeting. And announcements. I guess we'll go back up there. Oh, we got to read this again? No, they weren't here.
That it's
Oh, this one, okay. Okay. In accordance with the requirements of open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over Lunenburg Public Access. And we do have a few announcements. We're late, so try to catch up some time. Town elections occurred. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and voting. Sewer Commission is now whole and complete, thanks to Joan Pease and Joe Anderson getting re-elected for 3-year terms. And Troy Daniels has rejoined us and is fulfilling the 1-year term at this point. And I want to thank all you guys for volunteering, and girls, wherever you are, Joan and Maine, for staying with us. Town meeting went well. Just announced that all of the 4 of the articles that the Sewer Commission had passed unanimously at town, and appreciate the town's support for that. And our 6:30 appointment that was originally posted has requested to be rescheduled, so we will not be meeting with Mr. Proctor on the Electric Ave car wash tonight. Are there any comments from the public? Yes. Come on over. Greg, yes, sit there. That mic should be live.
Hello, I'm Greg Bittner,
It is live.
129 Pleasant Street. I was just recently appointed by my peers as Chair of Planning, so I just wanted to come and introduce myself and encourage any communications that you feel you have for us, or just try to initiate some dialogue. So just wanted to do that, and wish you luck. I'm glad to see you have a full membership, and
Yeah, we do.
that's it. So,
Well, thank you and congratulations on your
thank you.
chair. And I believe when you said communications, that there may be some activity to try to have some coordination between chairs of key
Yeah, I was
commissions.
basically just going to go to each board and introduce myself and see if there's any interest. I know we're going to be talking a lot about economic development, which hopefully, if it's successful, will affect all of us. So just try to initiate any kind of interaction and increase communication. So if there's interest in having a chairs meeting of the land use boards, then I'd probably ask Adam and see if we can facilitate that. So just put it out there.
Any comments from the commission?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Okay. Since town elections are just completed, the normal order of business is on the agenda is election of officers. And I would open it up to the pleasure of the commission if we want to do that tonight. There's 4 or 5 are here, so that's a pretty substantial amount, or if we want to wait in hopes of having a full quorum at the next meeting, which is never assured anyway. But
I'll make a motion that we wait until we have a full commission.
I would second that motion.
Okay. I guess the motion, we might as well take a vote on it. So, any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the motion was, to be clear, that to wait until we have a full commission, okay. Which hopefully will be next time, but may not be. So until then, for the rules, the current position holders are still in effect, so. Okay. Jack, you want to join us? This is great. Appreciate your coming tonight. Lots of good stuff. We can get some work done and make some progress.
How's it going? Mr. Daniels, gentlemen.
Yeah, well, this is to keep me centered in difficult times.
All right, under the operations and system maintenance part of the agenda, go through it in order here, which is not
Well, I've got it all in here.
necessarily order of importance, but it's order of the agenda. I&I reduction projects. So I guess the first thing we had on the agenda was just sort of a status, Jack, on the manhole dish installation. This is the $6,000 project that we authorized some months ago, and I'm hoping it's complete.
I have on the agenda, it says SWSS contract renewal first. Did you say we're going in order?
Oh, sorry, I skipped right over that. Sorry, with the heading.
I'll just kick back and
So that we can...
let you do that.
Yeah,
I'll wait.
so we can do that. We can stay, because I think it's fairly short. Do we have anything from SS?
No, the conversation or correspondence has begun. I've asked Debbie to submit a, request to renew the contract, like she has in years past.
I'd like to suggest, personally request and throw out for the commission, that Small Water, we haven't talked to Small Water directly in, I think, over a year. And I take responsibility, we've been delinquent on having our quarterly, they're supposed to come in quarterly and talk to us, and we've not managed to make that happen. So I think just at the time of the contract renewal would be a good time to have them come in and do a sanity check and make sure we're communicating and expectations are set and being met. The Commissioner agrees with...
Yeah, makes sense. When's the contract renewal? Soon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
Fiscal
and-
year, it runs the fiscal year, so the new contract would start July 1st.
Okay.
Would we have an opportunity to review the contract prior to their meeting, or would they be bringing the contract with them to the meeting?
The contract was actually a 3-year contract that was negotiated and went out to bid with the option to renew. So it's in place unless we have,
So it's just a renewal then?
yeah.
Do you don't
It
go
should
out-
be just a renewal.
Do we
That's
go
why I
out to
think
bid
it's...
again? If you don't go out to bid
No.
again, we just automatically
No,
go?
we can do it for 3 years, then we need to go to bid again.
So this isn't the 3 years.
So there wouldn't be any negotiating of any cost on there or anything
They had given us cost for the 3
for all 3 years?
Yeah.
So it's a contract for 3?
It really is just, you're good, we're good, kind of a,
Okay.
are we?
I guess the only question I have about that SWSS relationship with the commission is the granting of funds for this work, I see as a commission function. What is our day-to-day relationship with them? I mean, does that get into operations with SWSS? Is the question.
The question is...
I guess I'm questioning whether it's an operational function to hire that individual and to looking at the contract and granting them funds, is that more of what the function of the commission is? One of the things that, one of the reasons that I'm bringing it up is I had an opportunity to talk, I ran into Joan and got to talk to her a little bit, and she asked me, well, what do you think about the charter? And I looked at the charter, and she expressed that she was a little bit unclear about the roles, and so I'm a little bit unclear about the roles now. And I'm sort of wondering where we are on that, and some of the things that are SWSS and our relationship with them, what is it?
I'll take a stab at it. In the day-to-day operations is certainly under the DPW, and I know Jack meets with them weekly, and they deal with all the day-to-day things. Releasing of contracts and the funding is the commission's responsibility. We're responsible for oversight of the system and managing the enterprise fund.
Okay.
So from releasing the contract, and quite frankly, making sure that the contractor complies with the contract, right? And that's why I feel, delinquent that we haven't had, there's supposed to be quarterly meetings with SNS, with the commission, and we haven't had those, so. And it's those kind of things I want to talk to Small Water about,
Okay.
what's working, what isn't working, and so forth. And compliance with the contract, clearly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so, hearing no objection, could you, besides getting the letter from them, could you invite them to come to our next meeting?
Yes.
hopefully we can just get that all done in one night and be ahead of the game. Okay. All right, thanks, Troy, for making me read. Okay. Manhole dish installation. Just a quick update where we are with that, Jack?
Yeah, we're ready to begin that any day, Carl. Because of the paving in 2A, and it sort of falls into that because some of the dishes were going to be installed in those manholes on 2A. Now, of course, with the paving, and we can get into that detail later, even though I have little information, I do have some updated information. That will reduce the number of dishes to be installed. However, at the same time, they're going to retrieve the dishes that have fallen in to the system, which I have a list. I'm not going to read the list. I'm guessing 11, 13. And this is confined space, which is very critical to go in and get, just jump in. It's very dangerous and get them. So they're going to retrieve those and put in the number of dishes excluding 2A for the same fee. And that's going to start, I would expect, next week, early next week.
So, actually, it's great that, it works out coincidentally great that they haven't done the work yet, because we probably would have put dishes in 2A and then go pull the manholes out, right? So
This 2A is
good.
really, it's a double-edged sword.
Right. So what?
Nobody from Mass DOT is looking at it. I mean, it's great that we're doing it, but it came with so unannounced that it left us scrambling. But it's still a good thing for us, very good thing
Yeah,
for us.
no, it sounds great. So they were going to put like 40-ish dishes in, up to 40, that we were going to identify which 40 they were. So you're saying that some of those clearly were on Mass Ave, so we won't put any dishes in Mass Ave. We'll
Correct.
replace those manholes and
Yeah.
frames and
I can
blah,
get
blah,
into
blah.
that,
Yeah.
too, if-
When we get to 2A, we can do that. But
Okay.
So we won't do anything, none of this, so all the 2A manhole dishes will be out of the contract.
Right.
So they're going to do the other ones, wherever, non-2A ones, and then instead of the 2A ones, they're going to go, I'm trying to think what I think I heard, we're going to have them go in the manholes and recover the dishes that fell in the
Yeah.
2A manholes.
Right, and we'll look at those because that, from my emails, that remains a mystery to me because those just don't fall in by themselves. I'm almost certain it was because just the way the manholes were flipped, that they flipped off the ledge. Either way, we have to retrieve them, and the good news is that none of them, upon observation by the people doing the survey, were in the invert and causing obviously we would have dealt with that right away, causing a backup in the sewer, but it's not the kind of obstruction you want to leave in the manhole.
Jack, just for clarity, when you say they will be retrieving these, who is the they that?
Weston and Sampson.
Okay.
As a trade-off for, they're mobilized, and they have the confined space
Right.
component, which the other contractor did not.
Okay. And so that's a good trade in your mind?
It's better than good.
Yeah?
I think to get
Cool.
that, my experience with confined spaces, you need licenses. You also need the apparatus, which is quite expensive. You need a meter, which in and of itself costs $1,200, just to make sure the gases are right. So it's
Oh, a gas meter.
it has to be
That's what we need.
safety.
Mhm.
It's maximum safety before somebody gets into the confined space, particularly sewer. Although drains with the composting of the material in a drain can be dangerous and very dangerous, and people have died, the methane gas in the sewer is a killer.
Mm.
I've known people in the industry, I've known people that have died in sewer manholes. 3, one on top of another.
Oh.
Plymouth, New Hampshire.
Wow.
So
so
I
be
would like
careful.
to ask, one of the things that the charter says that we should make careful studies of the resources and possibilities and needs. And I understand the project and scope that you're talking about right now on a day-to-day basis. I'm wondering if at some point you can, or if you, off the top of your head, can help the commission with the possibilities and the needs in those areas. If, I don't know how big of a project that is, and if there's something that we're overlooking, something that we should be taking into consideration in the future that we're sort of overlooking or that might surprise us.
On this, you mean in general?
Yeah. in
Yeah,
general.
I think that's a whole conversation unto itself.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
And it's something that is ongoing, and frankly, to some degree or another, has been ongoing for 15 years. Commissions recently have become more aggressive about finding that. And we have done some I&I, it's well documented, and we have a plan moving forward. And part of the discussion tonight will be that plan,
Okay, thanks.
or at least the initial stages of the plan at this point. Not to be confused with the initial stages of the plan itself.
Okay, so that's a good segue into the next step, that I think the last meeting, I'm losing track, the commission had voted not to exceed for $8,000 to do the video cammering of the roughly 1,000 feet that you identified in the Whalum area, as well as the, give me the more correct word for
Flow
the
isolation.
stick thing. Flow isolation, thank you, Jack, flow isolation. Okay, can you,
Actually, it was,
where we are on that?
I'm not going to nitpick the dates, but it's important now because of what we're not doing. That motion was made and seconded and voted, and everything was very copacetic. And that happened on a particular night. The next meeting, if it wasn't the very next meeting, but a following meeting, which was held at the DPW, when we had both contractors come in, near the end of the meeting, Mrs. Pease had her notes and really kind of brought everything together and said A, B, C, D, this is what we're going to do, or suggested this is what we do. And there was no talk then, it was just not for any reason, but there was no discussion then about the $8,000 ceiling, although again, it had been voted upon at a previous meeting.
Jack, if I could interrupt you, the timeframe's upside down. We had the meetings with Weston Sampson and Wright Pierce at the DPW, as you say, but it was after that meeting
Okay.
that we met and took the vote for the 8,000.
Right. And either way, I wasn't aware of it, but I'd like to speak to that a little bit. It goes to this very, very simply, that even with the good intentions of the commission, we certainly had enough money to do those two processes. And for the commission to put a cap on it, again, it was well-intentioned, but it would have, in hindsight, been worth a phone call, because the simple math broken down in this particular situation failed us all, and that is this. If I hire a policeman, and forgive me, Jimmy, I know the rate's not $40, but for round numbers, if the detail rate is $40, and I really, I'm very safety conscious, we just need that policeman, the cruiser, we just need that for an hour, it's an in and out. But I'm not going to take the chance of staff being out there. At any rate, it's $40 an hour, but it's a 4-hour minimum. So I use that detail officer, and if I use him for 20 minutes, him or her, or 3.5 hours, I pay the 4-hour minimum. That's just the way it is. If we do some, a little bit closer to home, if we do some drain cleaning, so we have a sewer plug up like we've had here at the top of the line right in front of Town Hall, fella comes in, blasts it out, probably takes him an hour and a half, we pay a 4-hour minimum. I think the mistake that was made here was based on a certain amount of footage and a price at X amount per foot for a certain amount of footage. And then, although I didn't have the discussion, I'm thinking that it was, well, if we're going to do this amount of feet, which is significantly less, then it's going to be X amount of dollars, and we'll vote that, in this particular case, $8,000 will be our ceiling, not to exceed. Well, in order to mobilize the cameras, the crew, everything to do 1,000 feet, which is really not very much, it's the same thing proportional to the police detail. Okay, you pay a minimum charge. You can't just say, well, we're going to do 1,000 feet, so we want or expect or figure that it's going to be 1/10 or 1/4 of the overall big picture.
It's
So I
like
can-
when I hire any contractor, they charge me a trip fee no matter what.
Right. So I think what happened here is that with good intentions, that number was arrived at. Unfortunately, with the bids that I got and the bids that I didn't get, the low bid was $12,000, and that's the reason. And on top of that, based on a meeting that the chairman and I and the town manager had, we were going to okay a certain component of that because it was realized that the vote would be legal, logical to do a certain part, and the contractor said we can't mobilize that small part for that same amount of money. We just can't do
I
it.
just want to back up a little bit there. So you said that chairman, you, town manager had a meeting, and there was a reallocation or a redistribution in some way of those funds that had been voted on by the commission?
I wouldn't call it a redistribution.
Okay.
We had,
Or didn't, it wasn't the initial intent of the commission what was presented or
it
formulated?
was the same tasks.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could just bring up to
Yeah.
speed with the vote of the meeting, the discussion, these two elements were timely. We wanted to be done when it was raining wet, so we wanted to move out on those. And we didn't even know if we could do it because there was still discussion with the town manager whether or not the procurement laws would be met. So we took a vote pending approval by the town manager that the procurement laws were met, that we would go forward. There were two elements that we were talking about. One was, we'll start with the one Jack spent most of the time on. One was this TV cameraing. We had a quote that we discussed at the meeting Jack referred to from one supplier for $27,500 to do 11,000 square feet. The other element that we wanted to proceed with was the
It's called
flow isolation, which is, they go to the end of each street. And, both of these things are one evening task, in the middle of the night, they go, two crews do these two things. During the meetings with the two contractors, one contractor who put this on the table as an idea, made the comment that for them to do that, they're quite familiar doing that, it would cost $5,000 to do that element. So in our discussion, we said, well, let's proceed and keep our fingers crossed that it works. What's a reasonable sum? So we said, well, one part we pretty sure is a $5,000 element, we can get that. The other part was 1,000 feet versus 11,000. It's 10%, but there are fixed costs, so we didn't take 10% on 27,000. We said, well, maybe between the both of them, we can get it done for $8,000. So we authorized $8,000. So to Jack's point, when we met with the town manager and realized that we couldn't do $12,000 worth of work on an $8,000 vote, we said that it would be consistent with the commission's discussion and intent to proceed with the 5,000 element, but not proceed with the $7,500 element.
Okay, that was my question. Yeah, got it, thanks.
So do we have to vote today to continue the work?
Sorry?
Do we have to do another vote to,
We have to do something different. I'm a little disappointed that the contractor wouldn't do the 5,000 element because we're now, another
Oh, so
2
we
weeks
said no to
downstream. That's why, I just heard that for the first time, Joe. I think that's what you said, Jack, just to be clear,
That's 12,000 for the whole.
for doing both tasks.
That
But
a little- that
it
a little
was
bit.
still consistent with the vote of the commission, right?
What was?
Yes.
It was the 5,000.
The 5,000 was consistent. So and the other thing, just so that, I guess, slowly bring the commission up to speed where we have to on that meeting, the supplier the contractor that gave us the $5,000 estimate, who had this idea, was not asked to quote. So I would suggest that we go, because that was a standalone estimate. It wasn't a quote, it was just hey, here's an idea for you, probably cost about $5,000. So it's possible that that supplier, a standalone, would do it for $5,000. That supplier was not asked for a quote on the 1,000 linear feet, so I have no idea what that would be.
I guess that brings up the bigger question of I&I overall and our long-term or long-range strategic plan, and what is it, and do we do these one-offs, 8,000, 12,000, 15,000, or do we say that this is what we want, this is what we need to protect the sewer system, this is what we need to protect the users, we need the town manager and thereby the DPW director to manage that project within a much broader, larger scope of planning and long range, I guess, is my question.
I guess, go ahead, John.
Yes, I would hope so. Okay. So to answer your question, yes, okay? But I'm still hoping that there's an opportunity to do these two
Yeah.
projects in the short run, because that will help identify what we need to do next,
Yeah.
right, Jack?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so-
I mean, I'd like to do whatever we need to do to make sure that Jack has the funds to move ahead with these two.
I get,
Projects to
been in
help I get-
positions, I've been in positions where the funds are limited. I mean.
Right.
Anybody that's not worked with any budget. In this particular case, as I said, it was done with good intentions, but we did have upwards of $30,000, as far as I knew. That seems to be a moving target at times, to do the work. In hindsight, and it's not even necessary for me, but the logic of capping it with those kind of funds available escapes me, but that's what was done, and it was done by a vote, and that put us in this position right now.
Based on you said you got bids, there were
Yes.
3 bids, or
I went to 5
5
different
bids.
people and got 2 bids.
based on those
You have
bids,
3
what
bids.
is your sense of what you need, what you're asking for tonight? Or are you asking for it not to be capped?
According to the town manager, we've done our due diligence, and we've come back with the numbers through her, the chief procurement officer. The vote was taken. Procedurally, the only way we can go with that quote is to rescind the vote and re-vote. And I'm on thin ice here, because I've been in a lot of these meetings, but I think that's procedural, to get to that number. I know that's one possibility. I'm not aware of any others. With the rain, and with I know the water table is still high.
If one of us made a motion to rescind and what are you asking for? That's the question I
Sounds
have.
like 12K.
$12,000.
So it would be a not to exceed $12,000. Is that what you're asking?
Right, I think it's pretty solid.
And that's reasonable?
It's a fixed price contract, right, Jay?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't believe you had three no bids.
Well, this is such a small
It's just
operation.
not worth it for them?
Well, I don't know, I can't answer for them. They're people we've worked with in the past, and they're reputable
They gave you a
companies.
reason for the no bids.
Yeah, my problem with this is 2 things. One is, I mean, it is our responsibility. I mean, it would be inconsistent with the charter and inconsistent with our duties, our fiduciary duties, to turn over the planning of I&I or anything of the system over to operations of the town. I mean, that's our job. Our job is
No, I
planning.
didn't say planning.
Well, okay, so then we agree. Good.
We agree that,
Then
I
we
think that we
agree.
have a responsibility for a long-range strategic plan.
Yeah, okay.
And I think we failed actually in that duty. We're supposed to be, I get the sense that Jack is coming to us for these one-offs, and what have we given you as a long-term strategic plan?
Well,
And are we giving a broad scope of what we want, when we want, and how we want?
My sense right now, in the May, is that we were prepared to go with a broader scope, which included gas testing, house-to-house inspections, which are very expensive, as well as the two components that we speak of tonight. The urgency of these two components, because they're seasonal, optimum work can be done this season, moved us at this point to break from a larger plan in order to get these things done in a
And
timely
then we meet
manner.
twice a month, so, and sometimes we miss a meeting. So
Yeah.
that means that you're not getting
Well,
your 8,000 or 12,000.
yeah, I'm not going to go over
No,
why
I'm
we're
just
there,
trying to
why
get a
we're there,
better
but
pic- am I understanding it
think we
correctly,
are.
or no?
Yeah, I think we are on the verge of a larger
Okay,
plan, a second phase, if you will, because we've done one phase with similar components being, house to house and gas, and there may be some discussion on where we're going to go to do that. Some of it's the calibration of the pump stations, some manhole rehab, and then I said the house to house inspection, which is going to be pretty expensive. So there's a budgetary component. But I do think that we should look at a larger plan and agree on a larger plan with an enlarged scope of work, and then put that scope out as an advertised bid and move on it. The nickel diamond that we're talking about, the break-in, the comeback to this and that, my sense is the only reason we did that now is because of what I said, because we needed to do that now because it's spring.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because we had started trying to pull together a plan a year ago, Troy. Not until we met with the two contractors, Weston Sampson and Wright
Right.
Pierce, did we have what we felt comfortable were elements of a more comprehensive plan than simply go do a single thing and then see what the results were. So that was the start, and that was a great meeting, and both contractors were very cooperative and very helpful. And we came out of that, as Jack says, with about 6 items, nearish term items that you need to do first, about 6 things to gather some data so that you knew where would you go do house to house, where would you go do smoke tests, but then those would be the next big things once you got some data that directed you in a region of town again, like we did before. So we were on that track. Matter of fact, we came out of that meeting, and Jack left with a piece of paper, and then we documented in a little more detail what we meant for Jack to go write a scope of services for those 6 items. So that was the next step.
okay.
Jack got busy, whatever, we don't have a scope of service for those 6 items to go for a bid. But losing the spring, we said, let's get these two things going. They're pretty simple. Let's get them going. So that's why, so it wasn't really nickel diamond, it was trying to, instead of doing nothing, do something and do the thing that was timely.
Let's say if these things weren't calendar critical, I think we would have moved towards a larger scope more quickly.
Yeah.
And then, the procurement officer came into it, and the whole question of engineering and what needs to be, and that was discussions with her. And, I don't have all my emails, but it was going to be, decide what you want, and then we'll develop a scope of work, and procurement will take it from there. But are you clear on why these were broken out? I didn't come for these two things and
Yeah, yeah.
and say, please give me this, or
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
going to do these two things, then we'll do this, then we'll do this. No,
It was
it's just, it's
seasonal-
calendar
yeah.
critical.
So so we can move past these two. My only other comment is that I have good reason to believe, based on sitting across the table, as we all did from, not all of us, from one contractor, that they could do the $5,000 element. They were not asked even to bid, even though it was their idea, they were not even asked to bid on that or on the cammering. So I'm personally reluctant to go up to $7,500 for that other task.
Was the
without-
5,000 element completed?
No.
So neither-
We had talked about going ahead with the 5,000. The decision was made, I guess, after that meeting, not to go ahead with the 5,000.
And is it your opinion that it would be more
Well, I
cost-effective
know why,
to do it
because-
together?
I don't know, we don't have that
This
data.
is-
I would
all right,
like to,
let's-
I would
okay.
like to,
I'm gonna
I would
remain
like to see
calm.
this commission
Remain calm.
request that we get a quote from the other contractor.
No, it's just, I didn't quote it on purpose. I didn't go. I went to reputable companies. I didn't go to the other contractor, because I believe that well has been poisoned.
Okay.
I may be right, I may be wrong, it may be the point of argument, there may be hard feelings, but the fact of the matter is, I did go to the letter of procurement and beyond, and now at this point to say, well, I'd like these people, now that these are numbers that are out there, and it's a public meeting, and we know we can't exceed, we shouldn't exceed 8,000, it's just, it's not ethical.
Well, what's not consistent with our charter? I mean, we have a fiduciary responsibility.
It's not ethical.
And
They already know what the prices are, they already know what you capped it at.
if you'd like to have this discussion, we can, Jack, but how do they know?
I think what I'm hearing you say, Jack, is that because we're having a public meeting about this one-off, they see the public meeting, and therefore they know exactly what they have to write their bids for.
Well, of
And that's
course.
where the ethical issue comes.
Then you give them both the chance to quote again.
That's
What-
not the way it works.
Because what's not ethical is the company that came in, and I have, no biases in this market, but I do have the determination to make sure that we fulfill our fiduciary responsibility, which is to make sure we get the most cost-effective solutions we can for our customers. And
I'm
that-
not
and that
sure
we
by
spend every dollar.
putting it out there publicly, you are.
Putting what out public?
Putting out what the price is publicly.
But you understand the process, when we had these meetings with these two suppliers, the supplier who suggested this work, it had never been suggested to us before, so there was no prior knowledge by this supplier of the other supplier's quote or anything, because the other supplier hadn't thought of it. So the supplier that we're now not quoting had the idea and put a number on the table. Okay? So if...
At
so
the
if any-
meeting?
At the meeting a while ago. So that supplier put a number on the table, defined a process. The next supplier came into the meeting, we said, well, what about this? And they said, yeah, we can do that.
I really think that's a problem, Carl.
Which?
I really do. Having a contractor sit at a meeting and give you a price, whenever you put a request for proposal out there, it's to get...
There wasn't a request proposal. This
No,
was-
but I think there should be. I think there should be.
I think there should be, but we're talking about
behind.
we're talking about what actually happened, to get you up to speed with what
Well, I think
happened.
that's where I'm,
So it would be, so if this is unethical, then it would be unethical in my mind if you use that reasoning, and I don't think it's true, I don't think it's accurate, I don't agree with the unethical part. To take supplier A, who came in, made a suggestion, it was an unsolicited proposal, we said, give us ideas, they came in, gave us an idea, you can do this, and it's about $5,000. Then supplier B comes in, and we have a discussion, we say, have you thought about this? No, but we can do it like this, this, and this, great. Then we go only to supplier B and get a quote for that work.
No, we got 4 other quotes on it.
But we don't go to supplier A and give them,
whenever,
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. While we're bringing people up to speed, there was a lengthy email that I wrote that I sent out, obviously. You didn't get it. I can send it to you. I asked, so as not to bring it up at the meeting, that it be written into the minutes of the meeting, which shows my unfavorable opinion of how Wright Pierce had been interacting with the chairman and having discussions and putting, even though they're not contract numbers, putting numbers with tasks. And when I say, and I wanted to leave it at poisoning the well, that's what happened. We can talk about what they put on the table. You can talk about what any contractor puts on the table at a meeting. When you put it out to bid, it could be, and most often is, a different number. Okay, I'm not saying it would, that's why you put things out to bid. But the continual discussions with this particular contractor, consultant, I think, and I felt that it was best left out, because there had been too many discussions and too many numbers and too many phone calls and emails between a member of this board and that particular consultant that I said, "You know what, we're just going to pass him by." And that was my reasoning. And, instead of this back and forth banter, it'd be good if you guys weighed in on this.
The number brought up of 5,000 was just, just tossed out. Would it have been the same number if they, if they were to bid on it? I don't know, but you got 4 or 5 bids, and
I get 2 solid numbers.
2 solid
3,
numbers.
thank you, but no thank you.
Okay.
And these are Woodard and Curran, VHB, these are legit
Right,
people.
right.
These aren't Joe Blow from down the street.
Right. At this point, I would like to move forward with the bids that you have, or the low bid that you have. How much more time are we going to put this off? We're going to lose our window of opportunity, Carl, if we don't get it done as soon as possible.
Well, only because it's so wet now, do we have an opportunity, and excavating on practically a daily basis. The water table is still high. Typically in May, we could be in a dry situation, so
If you went
Mother
with,
Nature is with us, but
Right.
do I turn around and, and I will. It's up to the commission or a vote of the commission. Can you snap back into, gear, and how fast can you get somebody here?
How fast would they get here? If we
Well, they
did
were
it?
waiting in the wings for this bid, for the results of this bid. He had somebody on standby. So in my ignorance of the vote that was taken for the 8,000, I gave him a verbal to go ahead and start. And then after a meeting where I understood that a vote had been taken, I had to call him up and apologize and say, well, we can't do it now.
And if we came back, he'd be able to do it pretty quick. He'd be able to come back and get back into gear and do it.
I hope so. I'm a
I
little
assume the quoting
uncomfortable.
process it's kind of lengthy, right? It's not like a couple-day thing, right?
I'm uncomfortable right now because I'm uncomfortable tailoring a motion to a request for proposal that's been given already, and someone else being able to come in and say, oh, I would have done it for that. I think you're getting into real, and I'm not trying to say that I want to put the project out by any means, or that I don't think that it's valid and that we shouldn't do it when we can. But I think if we did make a motion, that we should at least give that individual or company and other companies an opportunity to bid. It just seems tailoring a motion to an individual is problematic. I don't, do you have any?
I agree, but I'm not a voter. I think we have a procurement, we have a more than reasonable procurement in place. I just didn't hit the number and again, I'll claim ignorance. I didn't know. I didn't hit the number. It wouldn't have changed the number, because I'm not going to tell people, geez, you can bid what you want, but we only have 8,000. And I'm not going to collude with people and say, well, do this and do that. It's just, scope was pretty simple, put it out there. and got numbers back. I mean, that's the way the process is done.
And we have a procurement officer this is a valid,
Correct.
okay, then I would be more comfortable.
Yeah, I see your point, but at the same time, it's kind of a unique situation, isn't it? Where we put a cap, and then none of the quotes hit it, so now you know what it is. I think in an individual situation, I would definitely go with you on that. That if we just put it out there, hey, it's public, tell us what you want to do, and then tailored it, I think that would be a situation that'd be a problem. But since we capped it at 8, the lowest we now know is 12. It's not like we tailored it to that, but we don't even know who that 12 is. So it's a little different. And whose responsibility is getting the quotes? It is DPW, or is
Right.
it?
So
we
the
said
procurement
we
officer.
control budget, right? And then you control getting, you decide who you want to do the work and everything, because you're
No, that's not correct.
not how it is.
No. We would put the quote out, Barb would normally put the quote out.
But this was not for that.
But this is not, yeah, let's backstep, that's a good point, Barb, let's backstep leaving for Troy. These are a couple of reasons that make this outside of the procurement roles. One is these are exempt. That's the only reason that the procurement officer is allowing us to do this, because these are exempt. Engineering is exempt. So 5 out of 6 of those things that we want to go do, they're exempt from the procurement requirements. But, we still have to do our due diligence. So, and we did, and we discussed that with town manager, that we believe we should have quotes, but they can be much more informal quotes. There should be a statement of work, clearly, it's defining it, but they can be informal quotes, so it doesn't have to get advertised. So you could call up
Due diligence.
Sorry?
Who is we doing due diligence?
the commissioners.
So,
It's our responsibility, the fiduciary responsibility is this commission. We need to make.
you keep saying that, and I agree with that, but I don't know what you mean by that.
We need to make sure, as
Every
best
single
we can,
contract, every
that
procurement?
all the money that is spent in the most effective way and efficient way as possible.
Where do you read that in I know that we're oversight of the enterprise fund, we set the rates, we set budgets, we grant monies and stuff like that, but within that budget, what I'm hearing you say is that, it sounds like you're saying to me anyway, that we're to overlook or oversee every individual procurement contract.
We are,
For our budget, yeah.
for our budget, and to make sure that the money is being spent wisely. Now, if we, in the line item, we say, in the line item, that there's so much to go do the house-to-house inspections, then operations does it, that's day-to-day, they make it happen. The manhole project, it was our responsibility to make sure it was bid, define the work, define the plan, go through the bid process as appropriate, and then release the contract. Once the contract's released, then the day-to-day operations takes care of supervision of that project.
Well, I think you're overstating that, Carl, and that's the point of contention. That I understand the fiduciary thing, but you're way too involved in I think you're incorrect in the process, something like this, where you guys don't and aren't supposed to have the knowledge of a scope of work and what's supposed to be done.
I disagree, so we respectfully disagree.
Well, I guess
It's
just
our
by way of
responsibility.
example, just for me to help me understand it a little bit better. So we give Barb a budget for stamps, for postage. Are we going to say that, Barb, you shouldn't have spent this for certified, all these for certified, you should have just mailed them regular, and it's our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that you spend less money? Or do we say you manage that postage budget? I mean, that's kind of, I know that's a small thing, and just for illustration purposes, I'm using that so that I can better understand, what are we saying? Like, where does to what extent is our fiduciary responsibility? Is that what you're saying?
I guess I could take your example to the extreme. At the high level, yeah, there's a line item, Barb has a budget for stamps.
Or do we say, if anything exceeds a certain amount, then Can we
Well, we
review
can
it?
set it up when we do the approval and define the line item. You know, we can define all that, because we're responsible for the money. We're responsible for the people's money and how it's spent, and that it be spent wisely and effectively.
So what I'm hearing you say is, yes, we do get to that, we would get to
You
that.
could, if you see some abuse or something wrong, then it is our responsibility.
Wouldn't abuse be indicated by going over the budget? That would be one indicator.
Not necessarily, not necessarily.
See, I don't agree with you.
See, the problem I have with budget, the problem I
I
have
didn't really
with
say much to disagree with, other than...
budget is that, right up to the time when we were having these discussions about the I&I and infrastructure, which you might think would be part of the budget for this, or part of pipes and things in the street, stuff like that, that would come under maintenance if they was faulty or needed to be tested or something. I've had 22 budgets at approximately $2 million apiece. I've never overrun a budget. And this is the first time, really, that money, I don't really even know up until a couple weeks ago, or now even, what money is available in the items to do this work. We had an infrastructure budget that I spoke to Barb about, and she cautioned me, and rightfully so, that I shouldn't be looking at that budget or counting on it, or whatever was said, because we're going to need some of that budget to pay Fitchburg and Leominster excessive fees. Now, we looked at a history, and it shows that what we put in the budget for those fees is, for the most part, exceeded almost on a yearly basis. So I look at my budget at the DPW, let's take fuel, and I know that I've underrun fuel for the last X amount of years. Well, it would seem prudent to put more money in the fuel line and not keep taking it from another line. Well, infrastructure money has been taken from infrastructure on an almost yearly basis to cover those overages, which can be variable, from Fitchburg and Leominster. So while the commission does have control over the budget, and the person who's trying to do the work never really knows what he has to work with, which makes it a little difficult. So therefore, puts the commission not only in charge of the budget, but by doling out or not doling out the funds, allowing or not allowing the funds, puts themselves in a position to control what's being done day to day or in a maintenance line. So while we look to separate operations from, in one group, policy, and it's more extensive than that, and controlling the budget, I mean, it's a catch-22 for me. Yeah, we want you to
Jack,
do
yeah,
it,
if I
but we're not giving you the money to do it. I have one hand tied behind my back and say, okay, well, this is going to happen, but we control the money, so if we control the money, we control you.
Jack, I'm not aware, there is, in the whole budget, to see your point, there is a infrastructure line item that is budgeted every year. I am not aware of the commission ever saying that money could not be spent, ever taking any of that money back.
Speak to the business manager right beside
Well,
you.
maybe I need to, because there's some transactions going on in some direction that's not coming from the commission to you. And you've got your hands tied. You're sitting there frustrated, having your hands tied, because you're not getting to spend the one line item that you have complete control over. And I'm now hearing for the first time that you think the commission's taking that away from you. And I can tell you, and you can look at any minutes, the commission has never restricted that line,
Well,
the spending of that line.
let's,
Now, maybe at the end of the year, unbeknownst to us, because, at the end of the year, there's money left over, and, it goes back into retained earnings, right? Maybe at the end of the year, it's not all spent,
right.
but never during the year am I aware of, in my 10, 12 years here, has the commission ever said, we need to take money out of the infrastructure line item and go pay Leominster or Fitchburg? I'm never aware of that.
That has always been it's basically an emergency fund. It's bulked up always. It's purchase of services full. It's got infrastructure, I&I, engineering, legal, it's got any contracted services in it, and it's always bulked
But
up.
Jack is just talking about infrastructure.
Right, but it's always been higher because you have to allow for emergencies.
Yeah,
So it's always
exactly.
had a sum of money.
Right.
When you get close to the end of the year and there are payments that need to be made to Leominster and Fitchburg, we look at the line items and where to pull from. And
But this is
at
what
the
time of
meeting-
year?
This is this time.
June?
In April,
Please.
we looked at the Excel sheet, and I gave a complete running of what was in the project funds and what was left in the line item budget for the enterprise fund, and it was determined that we needed the monies that were left in the enterprise, and we had that 37,000 in project funds. So at that point,
But that
we
was,
were,
but that was not in the infrastructure line item. I remember distinctly, we left the money because of the jetting. We said,
Okay.
we can't
We
touch
left-
infrastructure because
well,
we need to
I
do the
had
jetting.
reduced
Bob,
certain
let me
amounts.
ask you this, and I apologize if I'm trying to, if it appears I'm putting you on the spot. But when I ask you, and we, well, not ask you, when we talk about these potential projects, you told me we didn't have money available, we potentially did not have money available because we had to wait and see what our fees were to Fitchburg and Leominster. We waited, and it came to fruition, and you told me that, and you showed me that small spreadsheet that said, this is where the money's gotta go.
Right. But we also had that, we also knew that we had the project funds available.
And you showed me year after year, or a history of years, where this had been done,
Yeah, yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Barb is talking about, what's the title of that whole
Purchase of services.
purchase of services, not infrastructure. Infrastructure is one line item in the purchase of services. Purchase of services has our consulting money that the commission uses. It has a lot of things in there.
But-
There's one
The
line
discussion-
What
item.
I'm hearing,
between
Barb,
she and I-
can I just ask a question?
Yes,
for
of
Bob?
course. I'm sorry.
So what I'm hearing you say, Barb, is that what you're saying is correct, that you don't touch infrastructure, but am I hearing you say that you have to sort of manage and figure out, you're going to have to take money out of infrastructure to pay Fitchburg and Leominster?
Or another line.
Or another
And
line.
it has been historically.
And so you're balancing that, even though we're not limiting that, that money has to come from there to go somewhere else.
Has to come from somewhere within our budget.
Right. So it does affect the infrastructure.
No.
is that-
Have we ever taken money, have we ever shortchanged infrastructure in order to pay these other, or have we taken it from the engineering lines and where I&I is? So we've taken it from money that could be spent in I&I, but it's not infrastructure.
It is all one account. So it's all coming out of the same bucket. We have reduced the infrastructure based on, you get to April and you say, nothing's blown up. We're not going to need this 25,000 that's sitting in. So it has been,
I rely on
A
the
fund.
business manager because I don't control this budget as I do my own. So I rely on the business manager to tell me, even if I can or cannot, what the money is that's available for me to spend. Okay, there were two numbers given to me. One was this project money that, you know, it's been floating around there for years. It started in six figures. I think it's down to around 37,000 or so. Another was another number, I'm guessing 27, but I could be way out of it on that I was given. But not to count on that, because we had to see what our Fitchburg and Leominster fees would be. And I said, okay, I'm not going to even purport to spend or project or propose anything out of that until I hear from you.
right. But then,
And we did not, and we were glad we had not, because that 20-something number came to 3,000 or 4,000. And the reason why we can move forward or not with this 12,000 is because of the project money. And you yourself, Barb, told me that, well, Carl wants to put this here, and this doesn't go here, and he wants to use this money here and use it, and I'm not aware that that was a discussion between the group. But nevertheless, you and I, as partners, are not going to spend money or propose to spend money that we don't have.
Right.
Right? That's the way it went. I mean, that's the black and white of it. So we can spin it any way you want. The only statement I made was, I've never worked with a budget where I didn't know what I had to spend, or who was going to decide, where it came. And you just can't operate like that. I mean, listen, give me some credit for doing all these budgets and moving Peter to Paul and what you need and what you don't. I understand encumbrances, and I understand borrowing from this to take from that. You may have a good year here and a bad year there. But when you're responsible for certain things and you don't know what you have to spend, it's just, it's a little counterproductive, to say the least.
So let's fix it. Let's do two things. One is we should identify what's left to spend in the infrastructure line item. So can we take that as an action? What's in the infrastructure line item?
If we do that, are we?
Because Jack seems to have some work to do and he doesn't know what he's got to spend. So I think we need to find that number out for him and tell him.
Yeah,
In order for me to agree to it, though, I have to know something. If we agree to that, are we going to run short what we have to pay Fisher and Lemonster, and where would that come from?
We have paid most of what we have to pay to Leominster and Fitchburg.
Yeah,
There is
we're good.
there's a few, maybe
Few thousand.
6,000 that needs to go still, probably before the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
But what we had determined was that the line item budget had been fairly well spent between this and that, but we did want, and had been told to try to use those project monies. So, we didn't have it here, we had it over here to spend.
And that amount is?
That was the 37,000 on that spreadsheet. It may have changed if we've
The
processed any
project
payments.
monies.
Yeah.
And that has been our sort of, I don't know, what is it, our backup, but we've had that money, you guys know, some of you, that we've spent that down from over $100,000. There was some talk about whether we should have, either not, it's there. And that's why, from my perspective, when we look at getting this work done, it was a head scratcher for me, and now I know more why we capped it. But now why, having $37,000 to $39,000, why we aren't just doing this? If we had $3,000, I'd be the first one standing in line saying, we're gonna wait, because we're not gonna jury rig this thing and spend money we don't have.
Well, I mean, I want to remind people that, we're not looking to, we've got 37,000, we only get 12. When we rolled up at a very rough cut, the I&I near-term projects, the 6 things, not the house-to-house, not those big things, we were over $50,000. So it isn't like there's, excess money and let's just go spend it. We
have no
that project
intention
money
of
is not.
anything
Yeah,
in
for
the
people at home
advance,
saying,
so,
geez, you
yeah.
got 37 and you're crying over 4. 4 is important.
Everything's important.
Right.
And,
Good. Happy to hear you say that.
Everything's important, and I understand your passion for making sure that we spend the people's money correctly.
Well,
But by not spending any money in this particular situation, we're doing a disservice.
Yeah, and we need to fix
I
it.
would respectfully, since I never have a vote and shouldn't, that you decide whether we can go with this program before it's too late for 12.5, which has met and actually exceeded, and by the opinion of the chief procurement officer, is good to go.
Is it 12.5?
12.
12. And that's fixed?
Correct.
So if anybody wants to make a motion.
I'll make the motion
I'd
to
be,
go ahead
happy to-
and do the procurement of the $12,000 that Jack's proposing,
To rescind the prior vote.
and to rescind the prior vote of the $8,000 cap.
Can we name the project so we know,
Is there a project name for it?
or what is it for?
I believe it was the Whalum,
Is it camera and meter on stick contract?
Camera and meter on a,
Or
Okay.
flow isolation.
flow isolation and video of VC pipe.
All right, flow isolation video of pipe.
Second.
I would also second that.
You get the vote, you don't get the second. Just from a discussion point of view, I think the bidding process was flawed by not asking all relevant engineers to quote on it. And I think that $7,500 for the TV portion of this is much more than it should be. So that's my only comments. Any other comments or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I oppose.
As a follow-up, I will do my due diligence to reconnect, and I will let you know right away.
Okay.
Yeah, not as voted on. I mean, yeah, in the future, probably. We'll see if we can rekindle whatever possible thing. Maybe that contractor will get business in the future. I don't know.
The contractor has done pretty well. We got $400,000 sewer, what's the CWMP? He got a-
I would
all that.
discourage conversations about individual.
Yeah, I don't think this is really,
I don't know what the relationship.
Well, it
is.
sounds like you wanted to, give him another opportunity, and all I'm telling you is he's been an integral part in contracts with this
You
committee.
just keep using your best judgment, and we'll.
Well, I have to satisfy the procurement.
Yeah.
That's the law.
Well, yeah.
well, going forward, we should,
Ask you not to.
we should have as a commission, I think, a discussion if we have any wishes regarding the procurement, because most of these procurements, on this subject anyway, most of these procurements are outside of the mass law. They're exempt. So we need to do what we think is the right thing. So if we have any inputs to what the bidding, we should certainly have inputs and approve the statement of work, what's bid, then we should do that in advance, rather than after it comes back, in this case, which was painful.
Can I just say one thing? I don't mean this to come off wrong, but you've both been doing this for a long time.
It's the only-
It feels like the first time for some reason. I don't understand how we don't already have a very clear path as to how this is supposed to go down. And that's
That's
not
a
a
fair
shot at either
question.
one of you. You both know what you're doing. You're both doing, obviously, a good job at it. But I just don't understand how we've come to this point where it seems like we don't know how to procure simple contracts.
Well, we do, I know you're not being insulting.
I'm not trying to be,
No, I know you're not,
Yeah,
and you're
no,
not.
it's
But listen,
It's a good observation.
I've been doing procurement for 22 years here.
Right, and that's what I mean.
And I've passed the auditors 22 years in a row. Never done anything underhanded, and never been called to task in terms of doing the right or wrong thing for bids. And I think additionally, this discussion should be had with the town manager present,
That's fair.
who as the chief procurement officer.
Sure. That's fair. I just want to see, because I know we can obviously work this out and make it better and iron it out. So
Well,
we're not
anything
doing
can be
these
made
types of
better,
things.
sure.
Just to
Right.
continuously trying to improve ourselves, it's probably best for everybody. And then we're not sitting here for an hour talking about little
No.
things, because we're going to have a lot of big things coming up, and we don't want to be doing this every single time.
Yeah, so, let's try to keep that theme as we go to the next subject, which is the scope of services for the other tasks,
So these are the bigger ones?
which is the pump station calibration. Jump right in anytime, John.
I'd have to go back to the minutes, but
Jack, you had a little list there, the other items we need to proceed with.
I did. I don't know, is it
So-
your intention to develop a scope of work tonight?
No, it's my intention to either confirm your prior commitment that you were going to generate a statement of work, or come up with a plan with how we generate a statement of work for those elements.
The list is smoke testing, calibrate, and the
no,
area
smoke-
was not determined.
Smoke test we were going to put on hold until we got the results of the other
You
tests,
wanted the
right?
list. I'm giving
Okay.
you the list.
Okay, go ahead.
Smoke testing, calibrate the pump stations for flow per minute of run times,
Mhm.
engineering for manhole rehabilitation, house-to-house inspection, and initiate manhole rehabilitation. That was the list. Let's see, it was your email, no surprise, to Heather in April. These were also given values, except for smoke testing and house-to-house, which were TBD.
Yeah, so smoke testing and house-to-house were TBD because we really should get the results of these other things so we know where to go and how to do it, right? The calibration of the manholes and pump stations. And the manhole, and the actual manhole engineering, because they were going to actually do a sanity check on some of the manhole leak rates when they were going to do that engineering, as I recall. So there's some more information I think we need before we go spend $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 on smoke testing and/or house-to-house. So the ones we wanted to push forward and the ones we actually came out of that meeting with to go get statement of work for,
Can I ask who we are?
the commission,
The commissioner, okay.
were the pump station cal, the manhole engineering, and then the manhole work. And then there was one more, Jack, that we really need, because it's now become timely.
The I&I report,
Exactly.
which were mandated by DEP to do.
So
And what's the date?
I think it's due in September, so we're really starting to get under the gun now.
The state needs it for December. I think Weston and Sampson wanted to get it going.
Every contractor, yeah,
December is our
December's
drop
the
dead date?
deadline, yes.
is the
Okay.
deadline, but.
Okay. We gotta
So there
look back.
are four things: pump station cal, engineering for the manhole rehabilitation, the actual manhole rehabilitation, and the I&I report for the state. Now, I'd ask you one question, Jack, though. Can we actually get can we actually get a quote on the manhole rehabilitation work without having done the engineering? Don't we need to get the engineering and the drawings in order to go get that quote?
Well, if we put it in the same scope of work, obviously the chronology would be for the low bidder to do, obviously they'd have to do the engineering before the rehab. It would be 1A and 1B.
And the impression I got from Weston Sampson, who already gave us some numbers for that, because they said it was like, I won't say the number, they gave us a number, then they said they estimated a certain dollar value to allocate or something to do the manhole rework itself. But I had the impression that until we have the drawings, the engineering, which tells the contractor physically what they need to do to the manholes, that we wouldn't really be able to get a
Right,
a
one
hard
comes
quote.
before the other. Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
engineering always
okay.
comes before
So,
building.
so right now, then, are we down to three things? Do we go out and get quotes on the pump station cal, the manhole engineering, and the I&I report?
Well, I don't know, I mean, I don't know why we can't get the engineering and the rehab in the same contract. They just know they have to do one before the other.
But I won't know the price. Will they give me a fixed price on, before they do the engineering?
Give you a fixed price?
Yeah.
Give the commission?
There's work to do to develop a scope of work here.
Do we have a budget? Do we have a long-range strategic plan on this?
There you go, that's a good question.
And if we have a budget and we have a plan, these are the things that we prioritized. Can we, I guess I'm having difficulty with this time that's the itemized and prices on each individual one and talking about getting prices on each one. I guess in some respects, I have to sort of say that as a commission, we have to rely on DPW director and our business manager a little bit more to get that stuff done. Now, at the end of the year or the end of period of time that we say, we want this stuff, we'd really like to have this done, and they come to us and say, well, none of it's been done, or some of it's been done, and these are the reasons why it hasn't been done, and if we find that it's, neglect or whatever, then I think that it gets addressed in a different way. But I'm having difficulty with with managing each and every one of these individually and when. I don't think we should do that.
I'd love to put out a scope of work with your help and through procurement, even though some of them, may or may not have to be bid a certain way. If we put out a bid, a sealed bid for these items, and then we can put in, special conditions, general notes, a chronology, but then see, I guess the question is, are we putting this out to bid without knowing if we have money to cover it?
We have
do.
established with Barb's help.
Okay.
These things here, because we have idea of how much it costs, right? We know it's not 100,000. So with Barb's help, looking at the project funds, looking at what we've got in this fiscal year, and looking at what we've budgeted for next fiscal year, we can absolutely cover these.
Well, that's good news. And
I don't know why that's a surprise, because we've known that for all, that's in the memo to you and Heather, that's why I put dollars estimates in there based on inputs from our contractors.
If I go by your dollar estimates, you're at $14,000 for what we just okayed for 12 and capped at 8.
How's that? Help me with that.
It's
not
in an
possible.
email
No,
from you to Heather.
Tell me the numbers, or show me the piece of paper.
Amherst Pacific Streets,
Can't-
9,000.
That was.
Heater on a stick, otherwise known as flow isolation, 5,000.
5,000. And the camera, Jack, well, if you bring it up, you got to be ready to talk about it. The $9,000 estimate that was on that piece of paper was based on the discussion that we had with you and the engineer and the suppliers. And at that meeting, you indicated that, no, we don't need all 11,000 feet cambered. We need a lot less.
Okay, so this was
Right?
based on the...
And this was based on, and that was based on, as I've told you before, that was based on an assumption that the lot less would be maybe a third of the $27,000 that was quoted. So it was a third, was this estimate that instead of 11,000, we were going to do 4,000 or 5,000.
Okay, fine.
Okay? So the way we got from 9 down, because that was your point, you're saying that's 14 and not 8, is that the 9,000 allocated for 6,000 linear feet, subsequently, when you looked at the as-built drawings, became 1,000. So we said, well, it's not going to be 9,000 anymore, it's going to be significantly less.
Gotcha.
So that's how we got from 14 to 8. Thank you for asking.
So, but what I'm hearing you say is that you relied on Jack to tell you that it wasn't going to be as much as what it was originally thought, but we couldn't rely on him to spend within that budget without putting a cap. Is that what I'm hearing?
We felt it was appropriate to, because there was no time for discussions, but I personally, and I don't think it was verbally discussed, that have a blank check of just go do whatever. So we put what we felt was a reasonable cap. And that...
So that didn't, so we relied on Jack to tell us that it wasn't going to be as much as what was in the budget. But then, we as a commission, or you as a commission at the time, couldn't rely to use that budget.
We chose to put a not to
Change the
exceed.
budget.
We chose to put a not to exceed, not to change the budget. There was no budget.
Okay.
Why do you say change the budget?
Well, you say that there was a certain amount of money allotted, or at least talked about, and that
Yeah, this-
Jack came back with certain numbers saying it wasn't going to be that much, that there wasn't going to be, you didn't need the whole 11,000 feet or whatever.
Right.
So then we're going to rearrange and spend differently. But what I'm saying is, on one hand, you trusted him to tell you that it wasn't going to be that much, but then on the other hand, we couldn't trust that he could manage that budget.
No,
with that.
I resent the implication that we don't trust Jack. The commission doesn't trust Jack.
I'm trying to be clear on what, I guess I'm just trying to figure out.
We did what
what
we thought
extent
was
are we going
right.
to manage that budget or line item.
what we need to do, per the charter, is we need to come up with...
Tell me where it says that.
We need, says what? I didn't say anything yet. We need, it's our responsibility to establish and implement a maintenance plan for the system. That's our responsibility. And in my mind, a maintenance plan is what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, allocate the
Where
funding...
does it say that?
Not a good public reader, but I will be happy to read it. I'll tell you what, I'll read it off of... You can read along. So, it says, under the Charter, 113, the powers and duties, the Board of Sewer Commissioners shall make careful studies of the resources, possibilities, and needs of the town, right there, and needs of the town as they relate to the availability of sanitary sewer. They shall make plans for the installation of a sanitary sewer and for the maintenance of a sanitary sewer system. So the Sewer Commission shall make plans for the maintenance of a sanitary sewer system.
Not manage it.
Not manage it. No, I didn't say manage it, did I? I said make plans and allocate funds, because we're responsible
Right.
for the,
Yeah,
so we
budget.
need to make the plan, allocate the funds, and then, when we're done that, and we go through the process, we choose the supplier, whatever, we've got a plan, we've got funding, we say operations, go implement. And in the last sentence, the town manager has the responsibility, who she delegates appropriately to DEPD,
Karen Mead.
whoever, to supervise is that the maintenance of the sanitary sewers shall be under the supervision of the town manager. So they supervise the plan, they make sure the plan gets implemented, Jack does all his good stuff, goes out, makes sure the construction's right, goes do all that stuff.
What I'm reading from the charter, section 314, it says, "The day-to-day operation, care, and maintenance of the sanitary sewers shall be under the supervision of the town manager." That's, I pulled this off of the town charter that's available on the website from Lunenburg.
Could I, may I? This is actually, the interpretation of the charter, and I respect everybody's interpretation, is really the point, the boiling point of who does what, and we've struggled with this at best. I don't know, well, I do know this, that we should have a discussion with the appropriate individuals to determine the implications of this charter. Because while I respect Carl's interpretation, I've not heard from anyone else, and you know, I don't agree. So I think that has to be cleared up. And I think we can go round and round on this with meetings, and it comes up, it raises its head, we go round and round. I think we need someone or some group to help us interpret it.
Well, I think for me, it's, feel like we're getting bogged down into these individual things, and we're already here like 8:30.
Yeah.
And the meetings used to go until 10 o'clock and later whenever I was here before, and I just don't know that I can make that kind of commitment. I mean, I really think that we need to focus on the bigger plan and guide the growth and the development.
I couldn't agree more. We're
Okay.
trying to put together a plan.
Okay.
I can't put together a plan without identifying the elements, the time frame. I can't allocate money. We can't allocate money without getting
But didn't you say
scope.
that's what we paid the consultant for? That they came up with the plan for us?
There is no plan.
Okay.
There is no plan.
Okay.
If there's a plan somebody could put on the table, I would be just tickled pink.
Well, we could do that. That's why we have consultants. We could, that's why when I...
Yeah, and that's why we had-
Engineer let's say, an intersection, for instance. We start with a conceptual plan. We don't start with the bid.
No,
We
that,
start with a conceptual plan.
and that's why we had the engineers in. We had both the people that we work with regularly come in.
Moving forward.
And give us input so that we could develop the, and out of that meeting, it was excellent. Out of that meeting, we came with 6 elements, initial steps for the next fiscal year of elements of a plan.
Yeah,
Now we're
I'm
trying
with
to
Troy on this.
grasp
This
them
has
here.
been a discussion that you and I had a year ago, and maybe it's time to bring it up. The system's somewhat flawed insofar as my allocation in the budget is supposed to be 4 or 5 hours a week to this commission. Now, that's clearly not enough, and it's clearly not what I spend with this committee. It's exceedingly more, excessively more at times. And, you know, to sit here and for hours and hours and hours and rehash the same things over and over again. I mean, I brought up this point in November when I did that lengthy spiel. It's just, you know what, if we have an agenda, take a page out of the selectmen's book. They have an agenda. They attack 2 or 3 items or 4 items, I don't know. And they deal with them and they move on. I mean, for us, for you all, everything's on the agenda with the fact that, well, you know, if we get to it, we don't get to it. It's there if we need to discuss it. This is the issue. This is, you know, this is why we lose people. It's certainly why we lose my agenda. I mean, 3 hours, 3.5 hours for meetings? Are you kidding me?
Okay, so I hear you. So let's get back to the agenda, because charter was not on the agenda, scope was not on the agenda, so I'm not going to accept any more discussions on any of that. Let's stick to the agenda. Let's go to the next item, because we need to get some things done. And you're right, I should have stopped this discussion earlier, but I'm trying to be sensitive to people and new members. So let's go to the scope of services. How are we doing on the scope of services, Jack?
We haven't done anything with scope of services because we got so caught up with Heather and I in the way this was going to be broken out or not broken out. Whether, you know, it was procurement, how we're going to do procurement.
So will you...
Questions on procurement.
Will you be able to do them, or should we just find another way? And I don't mean that in any critical way, I just want to move this plan
I
forward.
think finding them, it could be my choice.
Finding them.
Finding a way to get the information. You want me to get the information, but you want to find the way. It's just maybe semantics.
No, we're looking
but-
for a scope of service. It's not a semantic. We identified 3 or 4
I've been
items.
biting my tongue.
We've identified 3 or 4
I would really
items.
appreciate it, and I mean this from my heart. If you didn't talk down to me so much. It really, that's becoming something that's really bothering me terribly, and I don't mean to make anybody
I
else feel
apologize. I don't mean to talk down to you
You
at
are
all.
condescending to me on a regular basis, and you know what? My own parents never talked to me the way you talk to me. And so I would appreciate it very much if you knock that off.
I certainly don't mean to talk down to you.
Well, you do.
I don't,
It's
it's
your
hard for me
nature,
not to.
and you do. And you know what? I'm about at the end of my ropes with it. Because I think it's rude, it's condescending, and it's just not necessary here. That's why things don't get done here. If you look at our own elected officials at the highest level, the Board of Selectmen, and use them for a model of respect and decorum, I think there's some lessons to be learned there. So I would appreciate it very much.
Okay.
If you knock that off.
I appreciate your sensitizing me to that, Jack, and I will do my best.
I actually felt sensitive to the comment that you just made about cutting me short and the new member. It felt directed at
Any
me.
more complaints while we're,
I don't think it's funny, Carl. I really don't think it's humorous.
No, I don't either.
I think it's very, very discouraging for me as a department head to have to put up with this, you know, often.
okay. Well, I would ask you a favor,
I don't
Jack.
think that it's funny.
Can you help me out here? Because I don't know what I'm doing that's upsetting you so much. So when it actually happens, can you point it out specifically so I can help correct myself?
I think you're intelligent enough.
So
You're a very intelligent person.
I'm not intelligent enough to know when I'm talking down to you. I have to admit that.
Apparently.
So I need your help, Jack.
Yeah.
I will
All right,
point out that
point.
whenever, go ahead.
I think the point is duly noted,
Okay.
and feel free to point it out to him every time. He's asking you to. But your point is duly noted.
Okay, so what are we going to do about a scope of work? Scope of services for the 4 items we just talked about? Will you
It's
have
likely-
time to, because the time is an issue, I understand that. We need to talk to, amongst ourselves and to the town manager, because maybe the time allocation you have is not
It's-
sufficient. We need to do something
Yeah, it's not
different.
something I can do alone. I'm going to need the help of a consultant.
Okay.
It's only a small number of items, but it's a wide range of scope.
Is that something you need to quote out too, to get, or do you have a consultant that you use regularly that you would?
Well, we have consultants, and we do use them regularly, and they are, because we do use them, and we share the wealth,
Right.
and we don't have blinders on as to who we use, people are willing to help.
So I guess my question is, because I just don't understand.
At no cost.
Do you have to, oh, it's no cost, so then you don't have to.
I will
was gonna
let you
ask if
know.
have to
I will
quote
let
it.
you know. I don't have any expectations of asking people favors, but if I bring this up to people, if it's going to be at no charge, then we'll move forward. If not, I'll have to come back here for it.
Yeah, because every time I hear the word consultants, I just assume.
Yeah,
money's
well, it's
involved.
not that way, and that's why it's important to establish relationships with consultants.
Yeah, yeah. That's good that you have
Over
one.
time, and not, not change regularly, and not put all your eggs in one basket.
Okay, so if you need resources, you'll come back to us.
I will.
Otherwise, what would you target roughly the amount of time would be necessary for at least the three things that we need to get going, the pump station, Cal, the engineering for the manhole
Yeah.
rework, and the I&I?
I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth as I often do. I'm not going to give you time, given my workload.
But the I&I, okay, so that's fine if you can't, I can't draw it out of you, but the I&I report is a very timely issue,
Right,
so.
right, and I'm sensitive
If
to
you-
that.
If you don't have time for that, maybe we need to do something different. Maybe the commission
Well,
needs to come up with it or
You
something.
don't need to jump right now. I mean, in terms of looking for something else.
So can we prioritize that one first,
Sure.
since they're standalone line items anyway? Because I'm just getting concerned that we'll meet the deadline and have a quality,
Well, if
quality
you remember
report.
that presentation in November, it had a number of things that have already been put together that we've done, and we've done considerable things since then. So I'm sensitive to the time as well. So that will be a priority.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, Weston and Sampson thought that we have done quite a bit already.
Yeah, it was in that PowerPoint.
Right,
We have done quite a bit.
right,
Right.
And we lose track of that sometimes because there's so much to do.
right.
We have done a lot.
Okay, let's move on then. Pump station reports. And the key issue here is not the report itself, but the fact that they've been put on hold, and we had sent you, the commission discussed this at the prior meeting, and sent you some,
The pump
Questions?
station reports, to me, have been up to this point, have been a miserable failure. Selfishly, I don't look at the data because I have the value of the mechanic at my desk for as many hours as I need, at least once a week. So what's more important to me, and he can tell me about run times, and for whatever reason, there's a real disconnect between the back office support at SWSS and the mechanics, if you will, in the field. And honestly, it's taken this long to get their house in order for that. And I just received this week, in anticipation of this meeting, a clear form, and I didn't want to bring them tonight because, I thought it was not, it would take time to go through each and every one. But in your emails tomorrow, you will get the most current report that was sent to me, just this past week, and for your perusal. And I think it's a simple one. I think simplicity is key, and I'm hoping, and I'm optimistic that this is something that you'll buy into, and we can go from there.
I never found the reports particularly helpful. For one thing, it gives you data, but it doesn't compare apples to apples necessarily, because don't we have different brands of pumps in different places, and it doesn't tell us, it tells us when they break down, tells us when they're back online, and you get flow. But what I'd really appreciate is an analysis of how that data can be used so that we can work it into our strategic plan.
Do you mean like town to town? Like
No.
similar stations to similar
No,
stations?
we have
The
multiple
10
pump
stations.
stations.
So I know, I just didn't, what do you want?
Run that back, Trike. I'm not sure what you're looking for here.
Well, I think the reports, personally, I am like you, I'm not going to take the time every single meeting to go through every one of those reports for every week of the month, because they don't really tell you that much from one week to the next all the time anyway. And you're looking at a bunch of numbers, they're not even the same, they're not even calibrated the same, they're not even recorded the same way on every pump station.
Yeah, that was a huge issue too, because it was
So-
like hieroglyphics.
Well, and then the thing is like, so I'm looking at a piece of paper that has numbers all over it, and it tells me pump station places, but my understanding was is that we have different pumps at different stations, different brands of pumps. So am I comparing, data that it doesn't give me an analysis, or I have to form my own analysis of how that data is going to help me in deciding the strategic plan for the overall big picture. Which brand am I going to go out and buy next time because we've had the best luck with it? Which brand is breaking down the most often? Which pump station are we going to have to replace sooner than later? Which pump station gets more grease than another? Which one, you know what I'm saying? It just goes on and on. There's no analysis of the data. So the data doesn't really help us in any way, or didn't help me anyway, to form any sort of understanding of what we could do as a commission for a plan.
What's important to me in the field, in terms of the pump station, are the small notes underneath the numbers that have been admittedly terribly unclear. You should now be able to see, station for station, each one has 2 pumps, the run times for pump A, the run times for pump B, the generator, and then maybe one other thing there. But this will give you, instead of this 37.1, you'll see the amount of hours, and unlike a car, it's not miles, it's hours, that pump 1 ran. If they're running like this, it's fine. Look to the notes below. If you see pump A not coming on, pump B cycling, well, then the light bulb goes off. But that's already been determined by the mechanic, and that would be in the notes. That's a heads up to him and a heads up to me. Why don't I give you this simple version tomorrow and see if it's acceptable and go from there? I'm with you in terms of it doesn't, for me, it doesn't help because, again, I have the value of the individual there each week. This is running, this is making this noise, this is doing that, and we get it taken care of.
Good.
But let me send that off.
Yeah,
so we
let's
don't spend
save any more
time.
judgment or discussion until we see
I'll email
that.
those to you in the morning,
Thank you.
or tomorrow, let's say tomorrow.
Okay. The other thing in that same discussion this commission had, I requested was is sort of, maybe you can just tell us how do we document our maintenance on the system? What kind of records do we keep?
I talked to Barb today. The maintenance on the system is I'd say 99% pump station, because gravity is gravity. And so the things that need maintenance on a regular basis are the pump station and the components thereof. And we talked about what the commission might want there, and before I get to the manholes and the spreadsheets, and, at any given moment, she can pull every invoice for any particular pump station, and we can see what has or has not been done.
So
No, we don't.
we don't have
a
like, we don't
record.
know what manhole we replaced or put a dish in or
Well,
pulled a dish out of?
We have for our vendor where those dishes were put.
You have a map, right?
And I think the initial was not a map,
Okay.
but they're identified. Where we took out a manhole and replaced a manhole, again, in that presentation, one here, one there, I don't have. We do that as a course of, I told you then, and I'll tell you now, we do that as a course of the paving. And no, I don't keep records of that.
Okay.
For me, when the information's available through the business manager, I find it not a very good use of my time to then develop an Excel spreadsheet and transfer that, at least for now. As we move forward, maybe when we get more help, that's something we can develop. Right now, the business manager can put her fingers on anything that's been bought for maintenance purposes.
How about like, because every year we talk about, we budget jetting of the lines. Do
Yeah.
we have any document that says what lines we jetted, or what
Yes.
the plan is for the next year?
We don't have a plan. But we have documentation on who did it and when they did it,
Okay.
and where they did it.
And where are these records kept, just out of curiosity? If we,
Barb.
so Barb has them, so if we
Accounts
want to check.
payable is mostly,
Hmm?
it's just part of the accounts payable.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Every invoice is there.
Yeah. There's no other.
There's no,
Running.
okay. 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 Okay, so the commission needs to, that's important information. That's what we basically want to know is what, before we start digging into it, we want to know what exists already. We don't want to recreate the wheel, or create, unnecessary work. But I guess the commission, do we have enough, is that enough information to have a discussion on what we think, in the future, might make sense to have documented for documentation, for maintenance? Anybody have any?
What are you asking? I'm not
Just
sure.
if there's any questions relative to the current state of the documentation of maintenance.
Oh, no.
I think it's sufficient for now.
Okay. Okay, I'm getting near the end, Jack. Food establishment visits. Could you, back in November, you mentioned the November meeting, the offer was made, and we generously thanked you for being willing to go out and visit the food establishments, but we haven't heard back. How are
I've
you
seen
doing?
more pumping of tanks in the last 6 months than I have in the last 16 years. So each time we cycled, we meaning Wind River and others, cycled at these establishments, I went out and observed them firsthand and was pleased with the documentation that they were providing to the business manager. At least 2 cycles. Sometimes I still go if I have time, but that ship has sailed for me. That's done. I'm convinced that the documentation that's asked for and provided by the pumping vendor is adequate.
Okay, good.
In terms of the visiting the establishments, I spoke with or called everyone that is supposed to hand in a report. Before I took that any further, I asked the business manager if everybody was up to date, up to snuff with their reports, and she said they are handed in when they're supposed to be handed in.
Finally.
Filed,
Yeah, they are now.
Finally.
finally.
Yes.
So, this first of all, in my mind, goes to a subject that has been beaten to death and is certainly disproportionate in importance to the amount of time that's been spent on it. That said, if our food establishments, having researched every Board of Health within the Neshoba Board of Health and finding out that this is what's done in the others, we are on a good path to having the people report. So I've left it. Until at which time Barb says this one or that one, or sometimes they have to be nudged, is not reporting.
I thought that SWSS did the inspections and they're not doing that anymore?
No.
They're not doing,
We never were able to
Come to
get a
it.
contract definition or money or anything else. It's very confusing.
so, I guess when I first saw it, I was a little surprised that we would send a DPW director to every food establishment. And looking at resources, I just hope that in the larger picture from moving forward, that we can allocate resources differently or more efficiently.
Right, we didn't send, this was Jack's suggestion at the November presentation, and we were happy to take him up on it, but we never would have sent
We
him.
couldn't come to terms, we couldn't come to an agreement, either with ourselves or with Small Water, in terms of the amount of money that they were charging to do this. This went on and on and on, and became something else on the pile of grease. Just got tired of talking about it, tired of it. So, went around and looked at things and talked to people myself. And the rest I just said, so I'm not gonna repeat it.
So I mean, I think that's working for now. So I think we got a good answer. I think what Jack did is made some benefits, so.
Yeah, and thanks for reporting on that. There were a number of specific things, but maybe we just need to pick them up, because I think, to Jack and Troy's point, I think DPW director is probably not a good use of his, minimal time that he's able to give to
Right.
us. But there are a number of things that we do need to follow up on then, because there were some very specific questions with some of the facilities that had schematics that indicated plumbing violations, quite frankly. So we do need to follow up on those. We had hoped when Jack was there, he could confirm that the schematic was maybe wrong, and it really wasn't a violation. But those, I don't think you had a chance to do any of those, right, Jack? So we
No,
we
and
would need to-
my respectful suggestion would be if there's an possibility of plumbing violations, and perhaps the plumbing inspector should go check those out. Because the Neshoba Board of Health, our own Board of Health, is not going to do that, as a matter of course with the food inspections.
They're all going to be required to submit schematics again with their applications, or,
To review, I thought they had them on file.
Question, yeah.
I thought
okay,
that was just for that initial year, that they had to be on file.
okay.
That would be my assumption, but I didn't look, I don't know if we were that clear that every year they had to, or they just had to have one relevant one on file. Makes more sense, I mean, unless they change something.
Correct.
I suspect we just get a copy of the last one anyway.
One of the things that I had an issue with before was that we spend time on reaching out to the people and doing these inspections and paying other people on behalf of all the users to do these inspections. And my position would be more in that our records indicate that you are in plumbing violation, or that you have a violation, or that you are in violation of a bylaw or whatever. And it's the burden or the onus is on the individual to come back to us and prove otherwise. I think we've spent a lot of time and a lot of resources to sort of fix it for them or find out about it for them. And if we have information or documentation that it's wrong or that they're not compliant, then prove to us otherwise.
Yeah, I tend to agree, that's what I'm saying,
Okay.
we're happy to take this back. I just want to keep the commission, that we do need to discuss, because we should put this on the next agenda. So we have these things that we are not sure, what method do we want to use? Do we just want to, whatever method we decide. I just don't want to let them fall off the table and,
Yep.
not be addressed. Okay, so, last one, Jack, and then hopefully you can get back to your family. Which is good news, the Mass Ave paving. Could you tell us what you know? I know they're not sharing a lot of information, but what you know about the timing?
Sure.
Where
I
they might
just,
start and what we need to do?
Trying to help the police department because they want to put out notices and they want to schedule police details. So as recently as this afternoon, I stopped at the operation where they were setting filter barriers along the swamp down around 2A.
Which end?
And what's that?
Are they on one end or the other, or are they just?
Oh, the swamp down here at Elmwood Road.
Close to the trailer park?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at that end. But that's just where they were installing these things called wattles, for lack of a better term, small hay bales. And the gentleman in charge there was sitting in for the person to whom I've been speaking. Apparently, he's on vacation. And today at 3 o'clock, the word was that at the earliest, the end of this week, more realistically, next week, for the operation to enter Lunenburg, which is the milling, that big grinding machine that takes X amount of inches or inch of blacktop over the top and leaves the structures exposed. They're thinking that that's when that's going to be initiated. They weren't sure, as I asked them, well, which end? Because that's critical to us, because our sewer manhole covers begin at Arbor Street. And he couldn't give me that information, and he said, well, we may go from both ends towards the middle, which, no disrespect intended, that's simply not the way that operation is, effectively done. So, I guess the end of this week, if I just regurgitate what I've been told, the end of this week, perhaps, into next week. If I was a gambler, I'd say next week. For the milling, that's kind of a slow process. It moves, moves very slowly. At that point, then the structures are exposed. For those that don't know, I did speak to the project manager and said, well, we have an interest in this, we're vested in this, because our municipal sewer is in part under Route 2A, and we have an issue with manhole covers and frames that need to be replaced. I was pleased to hear that from him that if we supplied the frames and covers, that he would have his crew make the adjustment and replace the ones we wanted to replace with the newer ones. To that end, I looked at the map that was given to us by the company that did the manhole inspection, where they identified 13 manholes in Route 2A that needed to be replaced. Just as a comparative value, they had estimated that to cost us $3,500 per unit. Now, I do believe, and it may have gone up with the price of steel, that each frame and cover is $400. So that's a significant savings to us. Going to have to stay on that to see how the brickwork is. It's going to be more than 13. Just a quick windshield tour for myself without police protection shows me at least 6 on top of that, which brings that to 19. And I think that's around the number will be 19, 20, 21.
How many are there in total on Mass Ave?
Well, I told Carl 24 last week, and I was mistaken. There's 24 from center of town to Arbor Street. I counted them because I didn't know, frankly. And so there's at least another 24 on the other end.
I can contribute, because just based on the manhole report, which, if nothing else, we can question the dollars and all that stuff, but if nothing else, they gave us a nice log list of manholes by street that was sortable. So there are 78 manholes on Mass Ave, 78. In the report, again, Jack's got to make his own assessment, but in the report, there are 34 that they recommend replacing the frame and the cover. There's another 4 they recommend replacing the cover alone.
See, I don't, on their map, that's sections or quadrant 6 at least. Maybe
I
goes
just
to
took
1.
I took their spreadsheet and I sorted it for Mass Ave, and then I sorted it for priority, and all the priorities, so I sorted it for replace frame and cover. And those are the numbers. You can recheck it.
Yeah, I'd like
I may
to-
have counted wrong, but I'm
I'd like
not
it
off
if
by
you
more
could
than
send
1 or
that
2.
to me.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I
that's a
have
good
their
one.
map where they indicate that.
Yeah.
And
I'll send you this, because it's, the nice thing is in Excel, it's not a PDF, so you can actually sort, so you can actually go through and do these things, but again, there, at least on this report, and you make your own inspection and say, no, you're crazy, but it seems to me, I'm sure you would say this, is that for $400 a manhole, we should do all of those and anything else that looks sideways to you, because it's pretty
Well, that's
cheap.
that's been my theory.
Yeah, so
Maybe all-
maybe 30, maybe all 38?
I don't know where their map differs from that, but once I have that information, it'll be
Yeah,
helpful.
okay, I'll send you this, and I'll leave it sorted like this so you can just look at Mass Ave.
Yeah.
But there's like 38 here that either frame and cover or covers only. So I'll send that over to you. Because I assume we need to give, what do we give the state, a map or a list of manholes? Or how do they know which ones to do?
I mark them and put them on station.
Go mark the manhole.
Um,
Good, simple visual. Okay, so I'll send you that. So we should
So that, you know,
we should authorize some
That
funding.
troubles me, because there's an inconsistency in their report that, you know, if not caught, would be awful. You know, but that, you know, I'm not gonna beat the report to death either. It's, we didn't get our money's worth, it's just not, there's some inconsistencies there that have been troubling, but
Yeah, well, I'm
neither
not
here
sure
nor
I've
there. If
seen
you
the
send me
map.
that, if you send me that, we'll be on our way.
Can you send me the map? Because I don't think I've seen the map.
Sure.
I've only had the
Sure.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So then maybe I can, between us, we can figure out why it's inconsistent.
You work on the inconsistencies, I'll work on the manholes. How's
All
that?
right. Okay, so I'll send this over, but I'd like to suggest that we take a vote to authorize some funding for this, because you gotta buy manholes, even though they're cheap, they're not free. They're $400 each. And my suggestion is that we authorize, you know, maybe it's even up to 40 or something, if we're looking at, from the report, 38 that are recommended. There's 34 in the report, there's 34 that they recommend replacing the frame and the cover, and there's another 4 that they recommend replacing the cover.
Would it be possible to authorize, and based on visual, if Jack's going out and marking them for replacement, based on his visual, that we, I mean, if we replace every manhole on Mass Ave, how many are we talking?
78,
78?
but yeah. So I'm recommending half of that, which is probably Jack is saying, nah, we don't need all those, but I
Well,
just want to be careful, that's all.
First of all, they don't go bad.
Right.
There's a lot of sewer in town outside of Mass Ave where some covers are marginal at best. I might not go with the 78 because I go with the windshield tour and saw that some are fine. And I think you're maybe thinking about just the frames or just the covers. Doesn't really work like that. We have to buy it all anyway.
Oh, so it's
Both, and
It's an
we had a
assembly.
discussion some months ago, I chased that down, Carl, you can buy one or the other, but then they have to fit that brand or type.
Yeah, it's probably missing.
So if we're gonna replace one component or the other, in this particular situation on Mass Ave, I suggest we replace the entire unit, the frame and the cover,
We're sure we need to do that, right?
yes.
Okay.
Based on this information, which for me is already a bit contradictory, but if we go with the 33, I'll try to find 40. Right now, I have 24 being delivered tomorrow.
So I'd like to suggest that we approve and authorize up to 40 manhole worth, so not to exceed. So if it ends up being a dozen or under, that's fine. But we're covered up to, we could go with the 38, but I just rounded to 40 because it's easier to multiply.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate. I think that I'm willing to go with that, but I'm troubled by this not to exceed within the field work. Because it's clear, if the commission determines a not to exceed number or not to exceed value, that's, to me, that's exactly what it means. And so, do I wait for another vote of the commission to go buy 2 more? Do you trust me not to buy 80?
Well,
I mean,
we can't we need to authorize I can leave, if the not to exceed makes you feel antsy, we can just authorize $16,000, period. I mean, we can't authorize a blank check. We've got to authorize a certain amount of dollars.
Oh, we
by
authorize-
definition, it's a not to exceed, because it's a certain amount of dollars. So you don't, so not to exceed is not relevant, it just implies that I know you're going to probably spend less, so we're not making you go spend $16,000. We're saying go get manhole covers, and we're authorizing
Yeah, this may,
$16,000.
may not be the one, may not be the case to bring that up, and we can leave that discussion, but it does, maybe it's not antsy, but it does make me uncomfortable with not to exceed, because with subsurface construction, things change in a moment, and I'm always troubled by not to exceed, but in this case, we'll go with it.
Well, and then if they're $410 apiece, then do we not have one or two manholes that we need? I don't, that's,
That's just the cost, is that just the cost of the assembly, or is that with labor and all that stuff put into it?
No, the state's
state's
going to
gonna
do
do
it.
it.
That's the
If we-
beauty.
state's
That's what I'm
gonna do it.
saying. We've got an opportunity here,
It's a long meeting.
opportunity here to jump on the,
Okay, so we're just making a motion to replace up to 40 manhole assemblies.
given, so simplify it, my suggestion was to authorize $16,000 for manholes, the manhole material.
And that's.
was that your motion?
Is that gonna be, I didn't say anything about it. Is that gonna be a sufficient number? I just don't wanna get.
I'll make a motion that we authorize up to 40 manholes on Mass Ave.
Well, let's go into the discussion, well, is it gonna get seconded, anybody?
Well, I can't, that motion doesn't, we need a motion with dollars, we're authorizing dollars, so it can't be manholes, we don't authorize manholes, we authorize dollars.
Let's table it, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is it 16,000 a sufficient figure to do the work that we're talking about here?
I would think it would be.
Okay, if Jack says it's okay, then I think we're okay. But I don't want to cut you off, so continue with the,
Well, it-
Modify my motion.
Modify a motion? Okay.
all right, I'll make the motion to authorize $16,000 for the Mass Ave manhole assembly reworks, or construction, however you want to word it.
Second?
I would second that.
Thank you. Is any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We should have, maybe we can follow,
24 coming
we should
tomorrow.
identify where that funding comes from. I think that would be a good thing to come from the, would that be a good thing to come from the project fund, or we need to identify where that is, and that in this fiscal year, I think it's got to come from the project fund,
I don't think you have it anywhere else,
right?
so, pretty easy decision.
Whether that makes sense to take it from the place where we have it.
Otherwise, it's kind of a moot point.
Can we take it?
Okay.
Fitchburg and Leominster?
Can we pay late?
They late-
Okay.
They charge you late fees?
Jack, thank you very much. We're at the end, I mean, you're certainly welcome to stay. I don't know why you would,
No thanks.
but
Right there with you.
that was our list.
It does get long.
Yeah.
It does get long.
How fast can we breeze through the rest of these agenda items?
Well, I think the next one we skip over, because we've talked enough for tonight about maintenance planning, grease trap compliance, we need to deal with the annual permit fees, and Barb sent out.
I did. I sent a spreadsheet
Thing.
later this afternoon. I apologize, but, it was. And I desperately would like to get them out tomorrow, even just rereading the regulations, the permit fees, I'm sorry.
No, remind us of
Permit
timing.
fees
'cause
are supposed to be in within 30 days of the start of the fiscal year, so it doesn't ever say in the regulations that we have to send them to them. They're available, but it is more likely that they will respond by us sending them out, so
Send them out.
I want to do it tomorrow. So hence, I had sent out a spreadsheet of, and it's tiny, so I apologize.
That's the Google Doc?
Excuse me?
Is that the Google Doc attachment one that?
Yeah, it's all,
the link,
it is available on Google Drive.
Google Drive, that's it.
Oh, I thought you just had one. No.
Even on the Google Drive, all the individual account information is all spelled out.
There was one for each restaurant, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. If you wait long enough, it populates the tabs.
Yeah.
And you can go and see. I didn't provide a whole lot of description on here.
Are they all up to date? Because there were, everybody was in compliance that I could see on the little
They're
tabs. of the-
submitting their logs, but
Oh,
the
okay.
compliance also has to do with whether they're late or
Okay,
things are outstanding. So for instance, A&D Crossroads is in orange because it owes us the as-built on the new interceptor. Plus he owes money for non-compliance. And similarly, along with that, and I just needed the commission's agreement, both Dario's and Extapa are impacted because they are restaurants attached to that grease interceptor. So I figured best way to get help in getting Crossroads to submit what we need is for Dario's and Extapa to have a threatened not getting a permit to discharge. So that's up to you. They're not doing anything necessarily for compliance because as having an external interceptor, they don't need to submit the monthly reports.
Right.
So I just thought, since it has been outstanding, they have been CC'd on most of the letters to Crossroads. So they're aware of the activity going on, but
Just do what you gotta do.
What's the sense of the commission on
well, I
that suggestion?
think we have to give notice.
Right.
I mean, you would be required to give notice. So if that's a threat, if that's a legitimate concern, then I think you have to give notice.
and they have the right to come in and.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
God, Larry's just timing, I'm not always prompt with logs.
Help me with the code here, just the
Okay.
color code.
Exterior non-compliant, interior only compliant is what those INT, AXT, it's either interior or exterior interceptors.
Okay, so.
And whether they're
so
compliant,
let's take
non
Bad
is
Larry's.
non-compliant, and comp is compliant.
Bad Larry's only has a
Interior,
interior.
non-compliant, just timing mostly.
So, and that's, so for the FY18 column, so this is the record, if I look at the FY18 column, this is your suggested.
Proposed, yeah, annual fee to be charged.
Annual fee to charge.
And that's what I will send out tomorrow is letters and invoices that match that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Bad Larry's, then Conrad's, he was still outstanding. You approved a waiver at the
Right.
end of April. I have not, that's just it was on a to-dos on the minutes, and I have not sent him a note. But he has not submitted the logs again that you had asked for. You wanted the logs back to before he closed and since he opened.
All right.
So again, we can send it, say you're not compliant, but
Okay.
he can come in and plead. Donnelly's, we skipped Donnelly's is perpetually non-compliant with timing. And I believe they still owe a $50 non-compliance fee. Extapa is part of Crossroads. Kabobalicious still owes us for the non-compliance penalties that were assessed. $2,000-something. So I assume she's non-compliant and would not be issued a permit to discharge until those monies are paid for the new fiscal year.
So do we, I mean, where are we in notifying her, making her aware? I just want to make sure we've done our due diligence.
Oh,
You know, I
yeah.
don't want to keep
No,
pounding it,
Yeah, she's
beating a
aware,
dead
and
horse here. but-
I believe these, I'm going to tweak, certain letters on these, on what
Okay.
is exactly.
I think this is another area where we really should have a policy, and you really shouldn't have to come to us and ask after all these years that whether or not you send notice. We should have a policy that, yeah, we send notices and that they're just automatic and you don't need to come and ask us.
So we do. Yeah, Bob does.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, but you were just asking,
Right, well, I knew at some point.
This one, Kabobalicious is a little different situation. We set up a payment plan for her. So we're not sending a reminder every month that you,
one of the questions I had about Kabobalicious, and I don't think it was ever addressed, whenever they opened, they said they would serve on paper plates because the dishwasher didn't have a grease trap. and the last time I was in there, they did not serve on paper plates. So have we confirmed that there is a grease trap for the dishwasher?
We don't know that there's a dishwasher.
That was one of the conditions of, there was a dishwasher there, and one of the conditions was you serve on paper plates. It was removed,
Yeah.
okay.
But I don't know that it's not back now,
Okay.
because there were paper plates like on day one, and then day three, it was
Right,
China again.
right.
I have no way of knowing if they put a dishwasher back in or not. We may want to take some action on that, but that's, to that point, it's not clear that they have a dishwasher. In their schematic, there's no dishwasher.
Okay.
And Vicky Shays, again, is timing Presto. Feel bad, it's like she was late once, and she kept saying, I've sent it, no. But it's easier just to say no. Sean Patrick's, again, was I would have to look up, as far as why, I don't recall.
The one that would surprise me would be the non on the, because they're interceptor people, right?
The Sean Patrick's?
So what were they non-planning on, pumping maybe, or? I don't,
I think it was the timing, that we hadn't had logs since 2015 or something. And then it took until, October of 2015, and then it wasn't pumped out until October of 2016. And I think that's what it was, that we were sending, because this non-compliance runs from last July.
Right,
And
yeah, good.
anything during that
Remember
period
that.
if they were non-compliant.
Okay. so maybe pumping back then. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Stella's was again timing, and I think a schematic was never received of the original. So some of that has, figured in here. And the ugly, just timing.
Do you keep a record of the people that we've granted waivers for? Because I'm seeing the same people that we've granted waivers for in the past on here, again, non-compliant.
The Google Drive.
Okay.
I mean, every,
And
I try to.
I really hope that that gets taken into consideration when we're non-compliant again.
Yeah. So, that's the list. My plan is to send those letters and invoices out tomorrow, giving them
Okay.
30 days to get it in before the start of the permit year.
If you need to.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's still three of us.
Okay.
Yeah, if you've got personal commitments, you
Gotta
gotta
get out of here.
get out of here. Thank you.
You said it
Before
first.
you did.
We won't be very long behind you here.
I hope not.
First Tuesday report for May,
I know you're gonna
Sorry.
tweak the letters, but just because the kababalicious, if you can, just make sure that it's clear that simply paying the permit fee does not guarantee a
No,
permit.
the invoice will have her entire
Okay.
dunning, so it'll be, this needs to be paid.
Yeah, good, thank you.
And she's had multiple emails and letters.
Yeah, I know, I don't want to come in here with a
There's no-
paper saying, my
yeah.
permit fee was this, and I paid it.
There's been multiple mailings
Great.
going back.
Thank you.
And Conrad's again was to, kind of note to myself, I've got to send him a confirmation of the waiver, but still, they've been open and didn't advise us that they're opening and no logs have been received, so we'll tweak.
Okay, yeah, and if we get something wrong, they can come in and we can talk about
Right.
it.
One of my issues also tomorrow is that the last day for POs. So my note to myself with Jack is, oops, I'm off of grease traps, is that okay? I moved on off of grease traps.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, it's great, go ahead, keep going.
Just moving right along. POs have to be into the accounting office for fiscal year 17 by the 1st of June. And I will not be in on the 1st or the 2nd, so I need to get them in tomorrow. So my thought was to, I don't know how much leeway, but that's per
I just-
Heather's and Karen's.
I'm wondering how, we got to talk about all these I&I things that we want to release, how are we going to be able to, we've got to
Well,
be
I
able to
think we
spend the
have-
rest of this year's money somehow, so.
Right.
And
Well, my thought was that I would do the 12,000 for Jack's
Yeah.
work, and then the 16,000 for the manhole.
Yeah.
And talk to Jack if there's anything else outstanding. But I have to get those in tomorrow, so.
So what happens when next meeting, Jack's got
It's more.
these other things, and we want to go release something, or, I mean, are we going to be able to write?
Well,
I can't believe we can't write POs anymore.
invoice is, we can create it for an FY18 PO. This is for, any POs now should be for work completed for fiscal year 17, or we would encumber if it had been something started prior. But you have usually 30 days to pay an invoice. If someone hasn't even begun work
Yeah, I'm
by
not worried
June
about the
1st.
invoice. I'm concerned about making sure that we spend this year's, what we plan to spend this year on I&I, for instance, that we spend it out of this year, and it doesn't go back into retained earnings, and we end up taking it
No.
out of next year where we
No.
had different plans.
Most of the I&I monies that we're spending at this point is project funds, and that does not go back to
Okay,
enterprise.
all right. Thank you.
All right, so that's what I will work with Jack
Okay.
tomorrow on.
But we...
Can I ask Barbara, how does it get designated as project funds? I'm just, for,
Any of our, when we had done that
When we approved the
spreadsheet, we
project,
looked at it, yeah. All of our I&I, it was manholes,
Yeah.
it was any of the, even engineering work, contract work was going to be.
so once it's
taken from-
approved, those funds are fixed for us?
They've
Okay.
been set for a while,
Okay.
waiting to be depleted.
Got it,
so-
thanks.
15 Oak Ave, do we need to?
Yes, I
Do
would like to
something
do
there.
that. And all it is a vote tonight. This is a property that had been coded as a condo, and within the last year had its use code changed because it turned out to be a two-family. So that means increased use and therefore is eligible for an additional privilege fee because we usually bill a unit per dwelling unit. So I'm proposing that we would assess a privilege fee to 15 Oak Ave.
So it's one additional unit?
Yes,
of
yes, yeah, 11.
11, whatever the number is,
Right.
magic numbers.
So if you approve or vote to assess it, I would send a letter tomorrow. And then the owner has 30 days to pay it or say they want it apportioned.
Or
And
pay it, right.
then we'll sign it, once it's been
Okay.
determined that.
We don't have a policy for that? When it's automatically reassessed, or?
It's something that usually the commission will vote to assess a privilege fee. Because it is a recorded document, and I will say at the meeting of, and that's what's recorded at the registry, so.
Okay.
It's something that I'd rather have you guys vote.
So we need a motion to assess a one-unit privilege fee to 15 Oak Ave.
I'll make a motion to assess a privilege fee to 15 Oak Ave.
Second that.
Only comment is, should we say why? Is it a change of use? Is it a
For
increased,
increased usage.
for increased
As a
usage? Could we
two-family.
modify that?
Increased usage, I'll modify it to say increased usage as a two-family.
Can
Second
you
that.
accept that? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right, we don't have anything
Business.
updated on billing outsource?
No. No.
Q4 commitment needs to be signed. We filled out 176, 815.87. And bills were sent out May 15th. Can I keep going?
Yes, please do.
SRF project closeout. Karen had sent us a request to transfer out of our enterprise fund $614 to be able to close out the SRF project. Otherwise, she would have to borrow it, so it was essentially
What's the amount, 614.94?
$14 is what she had.
614, I thought it was 94 cents. I'll make a motion to transfer it, the funds from what account?
From the SRF project?
SRF project, $614.
Second that.
Thank you.
I should say, from the enterprise fund to pay the SRF project.
From the enterprise fund, I'll amend to say from the SRF project to the enterprise fund.
I'll second
Still
that.
seconding? Thank you.
Do you need my signature
All in
on here?
favor?
All right.
Yeah? No?
All in favor? Yes.
All in favor, yes?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes? Yeah, well,
Yeah, I'd like to defer the minutes.
I would too.
didn't get through all of them. I'm happy to see them all.
Really?
I'm very happy to see them all, but had some other things to do. Next meeting.
no.
No?
Invoices for approval. These are all to Fitchburg. We haven't met for me to have you sign off for 2 months for Fitchburg. So one is 12/74572. And the other is it's an
You don't have to
increase.
sign it, but you may want to see it.
It went up to 18,767.
Oh,
Yeah. I did ask Flow Assessment to please verify the flow meters. He did and said it was extremely, there were high water, high rain amounts during that period for this, and that his QA checked out. So,
sounds like I&I to me. We didn't think we had much I&I in Fitchburg. So we need to look at those reports. When is when's our next quarterly, when will we see that again? Is that?
I finished the bills, so I should be able to get that.
Oh, okay. This won't be in there, though. This would be the next one? Oh, I don't know.
For April.
April.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
maybe.
it should be in there.
Okay, great.
No, you're right, it
No,
would, well,
I hate
You can just,
Pittsburgh's a
you
lot.
can just give it to him. We already talked about it.
Sorry.
So that's almost
Oh, yeah, and I just said.
at least
in-
50% more than we would have expected.
Yeah. Copeland and Page again, one for 527, help with, again, Highfield Village and the town meeting articles.
Okay, not bad.
And a second one for 238 for privilege fees and Highfield
Check
Village.
that out.
Lemonster's quarterly was for 58,434.55, which matched exactly what, given our bill amounts and the usage amounts for Lemonster Water, balanced to what I had expected it to be.
So the high month for Fitchburg was April? Or
Yes, it was the
April?
most
Okay, so
recent.
we wouldn't see that here. This is only through
Right.
the beginning of April.
How did we're close to the end of the fiscal year, right?
Excuse me?
We're close to the fiscal year, right?
Right.
How are we on the legal fees? Where do we,
We're doing well, I think.
good, okay.
Yes, because he'll charge for tonight.
Pretty
I
well.
think there's about 1,000 or 700 left in it. I don't think, I just got the second Copeland and Page today, so I didn't have that. So it's about 700. They've been extremely reasonable, Troy. All right, minutes are passed.
Pass, yeah.
And permits to connect, we just had some, 29 Summer Street was the old Howlett lumber, which we're gaining, which
Oh,
they've
okay.
changed over to builder's surplus. We
Nice.
want to connect, and we've got one trailer at Meadowwoods reconnecting.
Oh, okay.
And then we have 2 tenant situations, similar to the Pet Supplies Plus, where the connection already exists. It's so it's considered a reconnect for a dental office up near Pet Supplies in the Walmart
Oh.
Plaza.
Nice.
And 324 Electric is going to be a vet office. And I have not heard from her
Oh, is this in the, near
with where
near
the hair
Abialma?
salon was.
Is it-
Old, yes, yeah.
In that
strip.
strip mall?
So I haven't heard from her. I read it in the ledger that they had been in contact with the sewer commission. It hadn't been through the office, so I don't know if anyone had spoken to them. But I just need to do our due diligence on what you're planning to put down the system. I had contacted Fitchburg on the dental office, and he got back to me with what they would require, so we're working on that. Change of council, the tuition, did anybody go to the MCCPO?
I did.
Or CPPO?
I did. It was good. I can share it at a more thing. I mean, a lot of it was sort of this, open meeting law, and, it was a lot of, they took advantage of having people there, and they, made you sit through some of these things. But I will say, all that fiduciary stuff I said earlier came from that meeting. The Inspector General gave the introduction and the overview and things, and that was one of his points, is that all commissions, boards, he was speaking to everybody, that their responsibility is to make sure that the town funds are used in an effective way, independent of charter, that that's part of your role, is to make sure that town funds are spent effectively, and also to ask questions until you are satisfied. So, those are the two things I heard, John.
And those can be interpreted many ways.
But it was good, there was some good information that we can share, even some things that came up on open meeting law, but I won't belabor that tonight, it's too late. So, we're at the end.
Rex Bidner, and he just came and showed up instead. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
Our next meeting is June 13th, and we'll be at
At the
the
DPW.
And we'll have Debbie and Stormwater, and Dan Proctor has rescheduled for that.
For that meeting? Good. Okay, I have a motion to adjourn?
Sorry.
June 13th,
June 13th.
At 7 o'clock,
6:30.
6:30.
6:30. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.